My beloved brothers and sisters in Christ, there are moments in life when we are faced with a decision to move forward with our own understanding or to surrender to the unseen hand that guides us, lifts us, and carries us through. There is a voice that does not speak in noise, but in stillness, that does not rush us, but waits patiently. That is the voice of the Spirit. There are countless moments in life when logic seems like the safest guide. Logic tells you what makes sense, what is statistically probable, what fits neatly into the boxes of expectation and reason. It builds structures from facts, and it calculates outcomes based on the information available. But there are times when logic will reach its limit, times when the road ahead isn't mapped, when the answers don't add up, and when the way forward requires something more than understanding. That's where the Spirit steps in. Because the Spirit doesn't lead based on what is seen, but on what is unseen. The Spirit doesn't consult your past to define your future. It leads based on a wisdom that transcends data, time, and reason. When you are guided by the Spirit, you don't always know why you feel compelled to say yes or walk away. You don't always have clarity, but you do have peace. And peace is a louder confirmation than any logical plan. The Spirit leads you into moments you would never choose for yourself, but are necessary for your growth. Sometimes, logic would have you avoid the very place where your breakthrough is waiting. It would convince you to stay safe, stay predictable, stay where you're in control. But the Spirit is not concerned with keeping you comfortable. It is invested in transforming you, stretching you, and bringing you to the place where your dependence shifts from your intellect to your inner witness. There's a reason some doors don't open when they seem like the obvious choice. There's a reason certain relationships fall away when they seem to be aligned. That reason is not always visible on paper. It is something deeper, something spiritual. It is the Spirit protecting you, redirecting you, positioning you. There will be times when people question your choices because they don't understand what's guiding you. They will ask for explanations that you can't provide. They will want you to make sense. But being led by the Spirit doesn't always make sense to those who are only led by sight. You have to become comfortable with walking in a direction you can't fully explain. You have to be willing to say no to logic when the Spirit says go. That is not recklessness. That is trust. That is obedience. That is spiritual maturity. When you no longer need to be convinced by facts, but are confident in the whisper you heard in prayer, in the tug on your heart, in the unease that logic can't resolve. Following the Spirit will sometimes look like losing in the eyes of the world. It will look like walking away from promotions, opportunities, and even relationships that seem ideal. But the Spirit sees what you cannot. It discerns hearts, timing, hidden motives, and future outcomes. It leads with perfect foresight. And when you follow that lead, even if it means going against logic, you end up exactly where you were always meant to be. You walk into provision you didn't plan for, into rooms you weren't qualified for, into peace you didn't earn. Not because you followed a formula, but because you followed the voice of the one who knows the end from the beginning. Many people wait for every answer before they move. But sometimes the first step must be taken in faith, not clarity. Logic demands guarantees. The Spirit offers direction. And the direction may not always come with a full map. It may be a gentle nudge, a closed door, a sudden shift of peace. But if you train your heart to listen, you'll know when it's time to go, even if your mind can't explain why. That is the power of being led by the Spirit. It will place you in alignment with the divine, in sync with heaven, even when everything around you looks uncertain. Strength is something the world praises, the strength to endure, to fight, to rise again after failure. But what happens when your strength runs out, when the weight is too much, when the pressure is unrelenting and your soul is tired? That's when something greater steps in. That's when grace becomes more than a word. Grace is not just a gentle concept to be admired. It is a force that carries, that sustains, that lifts when you can no longer stand. You were never meant to carry everything on your own shoulders. You were never created to perform endlessly, to prove yourself constantly, to be strong every single day without rest or replenishment. There is a reason why even the strongest have moments of silence, stillness, and surrender. Because there is a power that goes beyond human capacity. And that is grace. Grace does not wait until you are perfect. It shows up when you're weak, when you're broken, when you're uncertain. Grace is not earned by effort. It is accessed through surrender. And that surrender is not defeat. It is the moment you let go of control and allow something greater to hold you. Being carried by grace means walking into rooms you didn't qualify for. It means surviving storms that should have drowned you. It means having peace in places that would have crushed others. Not because you figured it all out, but because grace lifted you. There are times when you don't even know how you made it. When you look back and realize it wasn't your plan that worked, it was grace that carried you. It was the quiet strength of divine favor that covered you when your decisions were messy, your emotions were raw, and your mind was overwhelmed. It was grace that whispered, keep going, when everything said stop. It was grace that softened your heart when bitterness tried to take root. It was grace that reminded you who you are when shame tried to name you something else. You don't have to understand how grace works to be carried by it. You just have to stop resisting it. Stop believing that it's all up to you. Stop thinking that one mistake disqualifies you from love, purpose, or destiny. Grace is stronger than your worst moment. It is more committed than your most inconsistent days. It does not pull away when you stumble. It leans in. It lifts. It restores when others try to shame you for not having it all together. Grace stands in your defense. When your own thoughts accuse you and demand perfection, grace silences them with the truth that you are enough because He is enough. Being carried by grace means you no longer have to be the hero of your own story. You are allowed to need help. You are allowed to be weak because in that weakness, grace becomes visible. It becomes real. It becomes the hands that carry you when your legs can no longer take another step. You might look at others and wonder how they keep going, how they smile through pain, how they shine through the pressure. More often than not, it's not because they're stronger. It's because they've learned how to be carried. They've stopped pretending. They've stopped performing, and they've allowed grace to do what effort could never accomplish. This life is not about proving your worth through endless work. It's about recognizing that worth was already given, and grace is the one carrying you toward the fulfillment of everything planted inside you. When you let go of striving and start trusting grace, your path may still be difficult, but your strength will be renewed. You will rise not because of who you are, but because of what's holding you. You'll discover that grace doesn't just carry you through, it carries you above. It lifts you beyond fear, beyond shame, beyond the weight of trying to be everything for everyone. It becomes your quiet strength, your invisible support, your consistent covering in a world that demands more than you were ever designed to handle alone. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the world today. To many, it sounds like giving up, like weakness, like losing control. But in the realm of the spirit, surrender is the highest form of strength. It is the conscious decision to stop wrestling with life in your own power and start trusting the one who sees the full picture. There are doors that striving will never open. You can knock, push, and break yourself against them, but they will not move until you stop and allow surrender to guide your steps. Because some doors are not opened by effort, they are opened by trust. Some answers don't come through calculation, they come through stillness. And some blessings are not delivered to those who chase, but to those who rest in alignment. When you live in a constant state of striving, you wear yourself down, you believe that everything is up to you, that if you stop working, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, striving often delays what surrender can accelerate. You run in circles trying to figure it out, fix it, force it, but nothing changes. That's not because you're doing the wrong thing. It's because you're doing the right thing without the right posture. Surrender is not laziness. It's not disengagement. It's obedience. It's saying, I'll do what you ask, but I won't carry what you didn't assign to me. It's releasing the need to know every detail before you move forward. It's trusting that provision will meet you on the path of obedience. Even if you can't see it from where you are, there are places you are called to go that require more than planning. They require trust. And trust grows in the soil of surrender. The Spirit does not guide you into chaos. It guides you through uncertainty into purpose. But to follow, you must let go of control. You must stop fighting the silence, the pause, the wait. Because even in those moments, something is shifting. Surrender opens your heart to hear what striving drowns out. It allows peace to rise, wisdom to enter, and divine timing to unfold. When you let go of your deadlines and open your hands to God's design, you move from pressure to presence. So many people walk around with anxiety, not because they don't believe, but because they haven't surrendered. They're still holding on to every outcome, every scenario, every backup plan. But surrender says, even if it doesn't look the way I imagined, I still trust. Surrender gives you peace before the answer arrives. It gives you rest even while the storm rages. It doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop worrying about what's beyond your role. You take the step and you leave the result in higher hands. There are blessings waiting on the other side of surrender. Miracles that won't happen until you lay down the need to control every part of your journey. Some breakthroughs are not delayed by the enemy, but by your refusal to release. Because as long as your hands are full of your own plans, there is no room for what heaven wants to place in them. Surrender creates space. It makes room for joy, for clarity, for movement. It lifts the burden of outcomes and allows you to simply walk in obedience without fear of what comes next. In surrender, you find clarity. You find that what looked like loss was actually protection. What felt like a setback was really a redirection. What seemed like silence was the setup for revelation. But none of this is visible to those who are busy trying to force what should be flowed into. Surrender doesn't make the journey easy, but it makes it holy. It aligns your heart with divine wisdom. It slows your striving so you can hear the whisper. It removes the noise of self-reliance and positions you to move in power, peace, and purpose. Waiting is never easy, especially when you're ready to move, when you've done everything right, when your heart is prepared and your hands are open. But what many fail to understand is that delay is not denial. Every pause in your journey carries a divine purpose. Every moment where nothing seems to be moving is often the very place where the most important work is happening. Not around you, but within you. The Spirit works in rhythms that are not tied to human clocks. What seems like a delay in your eyes might actually be a setup in heaven's timeline. In those moments where doors stay closed, when prayers seem unanswered, and when progress feels invisible, it is easy to assume that you've been forgotten, overlooked, or rejected. But the truth is, divine timing always has a reason. The waiting season is often where your roots go deep. It is where your trust is tested, your character is refined, and your motives are revealed. What you do in the delay determines how ready you will be when the door finally opens. Rushing ahead of God's timing can place you in positions you're not prepared to carry. A gift given too soon can crush instead of bless. But the Spirit knows what you're ready for, and sometimes protection looks like delay. Sometimes love looks like not yet. And even when it feels like time is running out, remember that divine timing is never late. Every delay holds a lesson. Sometimes it teaches you patience, sometimes endurance, and sometimes how to let go. The longer the wait, the deeper the preparation. Not all growth is visible. Some of the most powerful transformations happen in silence, in obscurity, in the hidden places where nobody sees you but God. It is there in the stillness that strength is built. It is there that clarity comes. It is there that your heart is aligned with heaven's priorities instead of your own desires. You may feel like nothing is changing, but something is shifting in the unseen. The Spirit is never idle. Even when you see no evidence, grace is working behind the curtain, setting the stage for something you couldn't create by your own effort. Delay strips away your dependency on results and to rise in relationship. It's in the waiting that you learn to listen, that you stop performing and start trusting, that you stop manipulating outcomes and begin yielding to process. Many walk away during delay, not realizing how close they were to breakthrough. But those who stay, those who remain faithful even when there's no applause, no confirmation, and no signs, those are the ones who see the fruit of what surrender can build. Every great move of God is preceded by a silent season. A season where you walk by faith, not by sight. Where you show up not because of what you see, but because of what you believe. The world tells you to hustle harder, to make it happen, to never stop pushing. But the Spirit teaches you to discern the difference between divine momentum and forced striving. Some seasons are for planting, not harvesting. Some seasons are for rest, not performance. And when you embrace that, you stop comparing your journey to others. You stop racing clocks and start honoring your own divine pace. Delay is not something to fear. It is something to steward. It is an invitation to prepare deeply, to listen intently, and to trust fully when things aren't moving. It doesn't mean you're being punished. It might mean you're being positioned. God never wastes time. He uses it to build what cannot be shaken. And when it's time to move, when the delay lifts, you will step into something greater than what you prayed for. You will realize that the wait wasn't empty. It was filled with grace, filled with wisdom, and filled with the quiet work of heaven aligning every detail for the right moment. There is a constant pressure in this world to prove yourself, to earn your worth, to show that you are strong, capable, and deserving. From a young age, people are conditioned to believe that everything depends on their ability to perform, to achieve, to impress. But there comes a moment in every soul's journey where that illusion begins to fall apart. You realize that no matter how hard you work, how well you present yourself, or how strong you try to be, it will never be enough to hold you together. Life is too unpredictable. The storms are too strong. The burdens are too heavy. And in that realization, something beautiful happens. You discover that you were never meant to hold yourself together. You were never created to sustain your own soul. You are not held by your effort. You are held by grace. Grace is the invisible hand that steadies you when everything shakes. It is the foundation beneath your feet when the ground gives way. It is the unearned, undeserved favor that surrounds your life even when you feel unworthy. You don't earn grace by being perfect. You access it by being honest about your weakness, your doubts, your struggles. Because grace is not repelled by imperfection. It is drawn to it. It flows most freely into the places where performance is no longer possible. When you stop pretending to be strong, you give grace the space to do what only it can. People often say, hold it together when life gets tough. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go. Let go of the pressure to be perfect. Let go of the fear of falling apart. Let go of the idea that your value is tied to your productivity. Because the truth is, you are not defined by how much you can carry. You are defined by the one who carries you. And grace is not just a safety net for when you fall. It is the strength that lifts you before you hit the ground. It meets you in the middle of your weakness and gives you the power to keep going, not by your might, but by something deeper, stronger, eternal. When you walk through seasons of pain or confusion, it's easy to believe that you have to fix everything, that you have to be the hero, that you have to find all the answers. But grace does not require solutions. It invites surrender. It doesn't need you to be impressive. It needs you to be real. When you finally admit, can't do this alone, grace steps in and says, you were never meant to. You were meant to be held, to be sustained, to be covered. And grace does that in ways you can't always explain, but you will always experience if you stop resisting and start receiving. It's not about striving harder. It's about abiding deeper. Grace is not something you achieve. It's something you dwell in. It's the atmosphere of peace when chaos surrounds you. It's the stillness in your soul when life is loud. It's the courage to take another step when fear tries to paralyze you. And the more you rely on it, the more you realize how unnecessary your constant striving was. You begin to move differently. You begin to rest even while you work. You begin to live not from a place of pressure, but from a place of peace. The world may never understand that kind of living. It values hustle, strength, performance, but grace values trust. It values dependence. It values rest. And when you are held by grace, you stop fearing failure. You stop idolizing success. You stop chasing approval. You begin to live as someone who knows that no matter what happens, you are not alone. You are supported. You are surrounded. You are covered by something stronger than effort, deeper than discipline, and more faithful than your own willpower. Stillness is one of the most underestimated forms of strength. In a world that moves fast, demands instant results, and praises constant activity, stillness can feel unnatural. It can even be mistaken for laziness or weakness. But in reality, stillness is one of the most powerful spiritual disciplines. It's not about doing nothing. It's about aligning your spirit with the one who leads with perfect wisdom. Stillness is the space where clarity is born, where anxiety is silenced, and where strength is renewed. The loudness of the world makes of the world it hard to hear the voice of the Spirit, and unless you intentionally quiet the noise, you'll miss the whisper of direction, the gentle nudge, the unseen hand guiding you forward. People often associate power with movement, but there is a sacred power in stillness that movement can't replicate. When everything in you wants to react, to rush, to fix, stillness says wait, not out of fear, but out of trust. Trust that the Spirit is working even when you can't see it. Trust that what is meant for you cannot be missed. Trust that grace is not just ahead of you, but surrounding you, filling the gaps where your understanding ends. Stillness is not passivity. It's faith in action. It's restraint when reaction feels easier. It's patience when urgency knocks at the door. It's rootedness when everything around you is shaking. Stillness reveals what striving tries to cover. In silence, your true thoughts surface. In quietness, the condition of your heart is exposed. That's why so many people avoid stillness, because it forces them to confront what business keeps buried. But it's in that confrontation that healing begins. When you sit with yourself, with your unanswered prayers, your unfinished stories, your unhealed wounds, you begin to see with new eyes. You start recognizing what is noise and what is truth. You stop mistaking urgency for purpose. And you start moving not just with speed, but with alignment. There are moments when the Spirit leads not with steps, but with stillness. Times when you are not called to act, but to wait. When the next move is not revealed because the current moment still holds a lesson. Stillness teaches you to depend on something greater than sight. It teaches you to believe that what's happening in the unseen is just as important as what's happening in the visible. That the Spirit is orchestrating timing, alignment, provision even while you pause. And that pause is not a waste of time. It's preparation, it's positioning, it's protection. You begin to understand that movement without direction is just motion, and motion without purpose leads to exhaustion. But when your soul is still, your discernment sharpens. You stop chasing what isn't for you. You stop needing constant validation. You stop forcing doors to open that were never meant to. Stillness strengthens your yes and clarifies your no. It guards your energy. It anchors your peace. It reminds you that being led is not about constant motion. It's about constant awareness. A stillness gives birth to obedience. Because when you're quiet enough to hear, you're bold enough to move when it matters. You won't need to be pushed by pressure or pulled by fear. You'll move with confidence because your spirit heard the whisper long before your feet started walking. And when storms come, you won't be shaken because stillness has rooted you deep. You'll walk through uncertainty without panic, not because the way is clear, but because your heart is still. And in that stillness, there is safety, there is wisdom. There is power in stillness. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to respond to every voice, solve every problem, or rush to every opportunity. You learn to wait until you're sent, to speak only when it's time, and to move only in step with grace. That kind of stillness becomes a shield. It becomes a sanctuary. It becomes the proof that your strength is not in what you do, but in who you are becoming as you remain rooted, grounded, and guided by something deeper than noise. When you stop living by pressure and start living by presence, everything changes. You no longer chase purpose. You walk in it. You no longer strive for identity. You rest in it. The Spirit becomes your compass and grace becomes your strength. You're no longer moved by the chaos of the world because you are anchored in something eternal. You don't have to prove yourself, fix everything, or control every outcome. You are guided. You are carried. You are covered. This is not a journey of perfection. It's a journey of surrender. And in that surrender, you'll find peace that logic can't offer, favor that effort can't earn, and doors that only the Spirit can open. Let go of the weight. Trust the timing. Follow the whisper. You're not walking alone. You're not standing in your own strength. You are guided by the Spirit, and you are carried by grace. That is enough. That has always been enough. That will always be enough.